So for a while, I wasn't going to do like a political compass test because I figured nobody cared. But I figure even if nobody really does care, which is fine, I'm going to do one anyway, just for one, to give people an idea of where I stand. Like, you want to just jump to the end of the video and see where I end up on the spectrum. But also just because I've been watching a few of these by a few different people I watch. And I found that they've brought up some really interesting arguments for certain things that I normally never would have agreed with or brought up or even thought of before. And it's actually a nice rapid fire way. It's to just go through a bunch of different ideas and why people believe what they do. And even if you don't agree with the arguments, it's a good way to see people argue for their own beliefs, to get an idea of, even if you're opposed to it, to then say, okay, this is what I have to refute. And maybe, who knows what'll happen. I'll read the comments after this. I'll go through and maybe I'll say something on an issue that I'm very uninformed on or that I'm wrong on. People will leave a rebuttal and something might change my mind. But that's the whole point of this, is really go through and just kind of give a few, explain what I believe. Maybe change a few minds, and maybe my mind will be changed. But this is politicalcompass.org, I believe. This one, I don't really like the wording of a lot of the questions, but it's the most popular one, and at the very least, the fact that this is on video means that my justification is a bit more understood. But we'll do this. I'll leave a link in the description too if you want to follow along, or if you want to do this on your own time. Just a few propositions to start with, concerning no less how you see the country and the world. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. I will say, this one doesn't let you pick neither agree nor. I will say agree, but not because I so much I don't disagree with this statement. But I disagree with the implications of this question, because I imagine it's going to say something like if it's going to serve transnational corporations, maybe it's an argument against free trade. I'm worried about how it's worded and the implications of it. But overall, I suppose it should primarily serve humanity. But again, what does that mean? I'd always support my country, whether it was right or wrong. Strongly disagree. I am not loyal to. I'm not really loyal. I don't think I'm loyal to anyone. I will give friends the benefit of the doubt. I will give my country. If two countries are equally bad, I will prefer my own country because it's where I live and it's the one I like. But obviously, when my country is wrong, if the people in my government are wrong, I'm not going to blindly follow them. I'm going to oppose it. No one chooses his or her country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. Okay, these are hard questions, because this is actually something on the question of pride. Because for me, there are two different definitions of pride that I've come to understand. The first definition of pride seems to be in a sense of pride in an accomplishment. If I accomplish something, if I hit a certain number, my 250 subscribers, I'm proud of that. Not because so much that I have it, but because I've worked to achieve it. I'm proud of something, I feel pride for something that I have accomplished and that I've achieved. I haven't chosen my country of birth. I haven't chosen any, this is not something I have chosen, therefore it is not a virtue. It's not a virtue to be born in a certain country. It's not a virtue to be part of a certain country. Therefore, in that sense, I agree. It is foolish to have a sort of pride of your country because you haven't done anything to fix it. But then there's, I suppose, the other definition, which I've only lately come around to understand, which seems to be more pride in a child. So, when someone says, if someone, or even a friend as well. So, say a friend accomplishes something and someone says, I'm proud of you. I'm not even sure if I've really dissected this in my mind enough. But if someone says, I am proud of you, I mean, it seems kind of foolish to be proud of someone else's accomplishment. Why would you hold pride for something that someone else has done? And I'm trying to figure that out, where that phrase comes from and what that means. Because in that sense, I don't think anyone's saying, when they say I'm proud of you, they're not saying I feel virtuous because of something you've accomplished. I feel accomplished because you've accomplished something. It's more of a, maybe it's an I am proud to be your friend, in the sense that I am proud that I have chosen to associate with you. I'm proud that you are a person that is accomplishing things, and I have chosen you as a friend, perhaps. That's something this is probably going to be the hardest question for me, because that's something I'm really working through. So in a sense, is it foolish to have the pride of accomplishment? Yes, for your country of birth. I think yes, I don't think people can say I'm a better person because I'm part of a country. I don't think, I think it's ridiculous to say my ancestors did something, therefore that makes me a better person, or that makes me a more virtuous person, or I disagree with that. I don't think you can say that. However, I have to go with the other idea of, and maybe just in a pragmatic sense, the national pride of furthering one's own ideals. So, in a sense, I'm not so much, I wouldn't say I'm proud of America in that I feel like I'm a better person because I'm an American, but more as I support and respect and value the ideals of America, and therefore, that's the, I think it's the second definition. I'm gonna say agree. Maybe someone can flesh out what I'm thinking in a better sense, but honestly, I think the big argument over this question, I think the big argument just comes down to definition of pride. Like it's people talking past each other because they're not taking the time to define what is pride. And in the sense of like pride of accomplishing something, well, I haven't accomplished anything by being part of this country. Like the only one that can really be proud of their country in a sense, I suppose, is maybe someone that I don't know. But I will say agree tentatively, and that I think what they're implying is the second definition. When people say they're proud of their country, is the second definition of I am proud to be in association with such a great thing, because people can always move, right? So it's like, am I proud to be born in this country? No, like I'm not proud to be born in America. I'm glad I'm born in America. I feel very lucky and grateful that I'm born in America, but I think pride's the wrong word. However, the reason I'm saying agree is because, in the sense of, I would say I'm proud of you to a friend, I would say I'm proud of you to America for its I'm proud of you, America, for your maybe that's what I'm going with. I promise I won't spend as much time on the other questions, but I think that was the most difficult one just because of the definition of pride. But if anyone has a better explanation than what I just said, please leave a comment, because this is something I'm really struggling with right now. If there was a neither agree nor disagree, I would pick it, just because it's all down to that definition of pride and being proud. Because that's like when someone says, I'm proud of their race. It's like, I'm not proud of my race. I don't even think of it. Like, I genuinely don't think about race. Like, I do not think of, when I think of my identity, I think of American. I think of, like, maybe, like, the hobbies I do, where I live, my associations, my job, like, my career, who I am there, my YouTube channel, that's part of my identity, but my race is not part of my identity. Because it's just not something I think of. It's like other people might say, like it is a, you can assign that to me, but it's really something that I could care less about. Which actually brings us to the next question. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. I would say disagree. In the sense of, it's something like, I know what they're implying with that, in the sense of it's like I don't care. Even if it does, I really do not care. And I think the implication is then like a moral racial superiority, and no, I disagree with that. That's dumb. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Agree in the sense of power politics, in the sense of tactics, because I'm thinking like communism and fascism. Well, actually disagree. I disagree. Because now I just thinking of communism and fascism. Like an enemy of communism is fascism, but that doesn't mean fascism is my friend. So that's why I will say disagree. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Depends what international law is. Are we talking about international law period, or are we saying as it is right now? I'm not familiar. I'm not an expert on international law, so I will say agree in the sense that it says sometimes, which means more than zero. So I will say agree. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. I disagree. Strongly disagree, in fact. Like, I think it's dumb that, like, I suppose in the fake news sense, like people, like the late night comedians that are putting out fake stuff, fake information, and obviously biased information, and it's all just that. But I disagree. Like, I watch people on YouTube not just because they're informative, but also because they're entertaining. Like, there's certain podcasts I listen to where it's not just listing information, it's the people there are very charismatic, they're good to listen to, and that's just, it's all about making your ideas good versus like good to listen to, good to hear, and that's what you need entertainment for. Now the economy. Here we go. People are ultimately divided more by class than by nationality. I disagree. I not strongly disagree. I just disagree a little bit. Because in the sense of like, do I have more in common with a middle class Indian dude or a Sri Lankan dude or I don't know, someone in like Burundi than I do? Like, no, I think I have more in common with an upper class or poor American than I do with someone of another country like that. But who knows? I mean, then again, it depends on nationality in the sense of like I might have more in common with a middle class English person or someone from Italy, maybe. I don't know. No, I would say nationality because culture. Culture is a huge thing. I think people are divided more by. Oh, then again, it says divided by, not that they associate with. I don't know. That's a good question. Are they divided more by class than by nationality? Because people are always attacking the rich. No matter. Actually, I changed that to agree because now that I reread the question, they're divided more by class. Well, I mean, it's always going after the rich. It's always going after corporations. And, of course, I'm not even saying corporations or the rich are always innocent or even mostly innocent. No, I will change that because even though people are critical of mass immigration, they seem to be critical of the elites more than they're critical of mass immigration. And it's not even that they're critical of mass immigration. I don't know. Because this has changed in recent years. That mass immigration is now a much bigger issue than it was a while ago, but people are still really mad at the elites. So I think class is a big thing in terms of just anti-elitism. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. I don't want to control either. Although I would say agree in the sense that hyperinflation is bad, and with hyperinflation you will get unemployment. Even if unemployment is incredibly high, it'll go down as long as you let the market do its work, as we've seen in the Depression of 1920 to 1921. Even if unemployment is high, just allow a free market and things will fix itself. It'll go back down entirely on its own. So I would say, agree. Inflation is hyperinflation is something much worse than like high unemployment. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. Why have something in my eye? They require regulation. I disagree. Because as I've seen that it's more that like I am very, very anti-regulation, but I suppose there are theoretically some good regulations out there. But who's going to be writing the regulations? Well, it's like, am I for regulating Wall Street? Well, I don't care because who's going to be writing the regulations for Wall Street? Wall Street. So it's like, who's going to be writing the regulations for big banks? Big banks. And I don't even think it's even possible to change that because once a government is powerful enough to regulate like banking or corporations, then that means corporations are just going to manipulate them and buy them pretty much. So I would disagree. Because as we've seen in the past, like there's a good example, I think, like the cod industry in the Netherlands, how it was fine for like 400 years. Like people were just fishing cod for 400 years, completely free of regulation. And then as soon as the government stepped in to regulate it, it just killed, like everyone overfished and it ruined everything. So I'm going to take the anti-regulation position. But then even thinking about, this might be applied to social media nowadays. Like corporations cannot be, oh, this is the environment though. We're talking about the environment. So in that sense, I disagree. From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. Now, this is, think about this question. This is obviously taken from the Communist Manifesto and Marx. But I know some people that say communism is good on paper, bad in practice. I disagree. Communism is bad on paper, bad in practice. Like, even if it worked, I don't want it to work. Like, even if it was a society that could theoretically function, it's not a society I would want to live in. So, strongly disagree. Why do I have something in my eye? God, that hurts. It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. Jeez. I would disagree. Because, again, like, something is sold. Why is that a bad thing? Like, no, sell everything. Well, not literally everything, but in the sense of, like, oh, the market is trading something that the people want. Why is that a bad thing? Strongly disagree. land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Wrong. As soon as you start saying, like, this thing cannot be sold, as long as you start saying something that would naturally be part of the free market, as soon as you start restricting that, like, it's just going to be bad because you're taking what the people want and you're just trying to manage it in a way that it can't be managed. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. I disagree, because I think this is applying to, like, middlemen. It depends. Like, in theory, like, if you just take that sentence as is, I agree. Like, if you just manipulate money, like, if you're someone that works, if you're someone who works at the Federal Reserve, for example, and that's all you do, you've contributed nothing to society. I firmly believe that if you work at the Federal Reserve, or if your job is if your job is to manipulate the economy, yeah, like, you've done nothing, you contribute nothing to the economy. However, I think what they're talking about is, like, maybe stock traders and people that, like, middlemen, people that all they do is, like, buy something and sell it for a higher price somewhere else, and that is not what they do. Like, they don't manipulate money. That is, well, I agree. Taking it, it's all down to, I disagree with the implications of the sentence and what they're trying to say, but I agree with the sentence itself. But I know that's going to move me to the left when it really shouldn't, because it's going to say that this is a left-wing position, even though I'm going to say disagree, just because if you take the sentence as is, this is neither a left nor right nor top nor bottom. Like, this is not something that could put you on the political spectrum, because it's just an obvious statement that, like, if all you do is contribute nothing to society, well, actually, if anything, if I say it's anyway, I'm going to put disagree, because the implications behind that, and that people have thought that, like, usury and things like that were bad, and it's, no, like, economists have later proved, like, no, it's just people didn't understand money. They were actually providing a valuable service. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. I am against protectionism. I am very much against protectionism. It depends. Like, if you say Trump's tariffs to get rid of other tariffs, like, if Trump puts on a tariff that causes other people to get rid of their tariffs, and then we lower those tariffs, then and then you consider that protectionism, then yes, I agree. However, in the end, like, I am for free trade. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. For the most part, yes, in that I don't think they should go on political crusades. I don't think they should... Yeah. I don't think they should go on political crusades. I don't think they should advocate for anything like Gillette does, even if it's things I agree with. However, at the same time, like, obviously, like, if they're doing some pretty, like, objectively immoral things, like murdering people, or really cheating, then Alright, next one. The rich are too highly taxed. Strongly agree. The rich are, I mean, I think everyone is too highly taxed, but the rich are also, the rich are included in everybody. Everybody's too highly taxed, including the rich. And when people say, I actually wrote something on this, I'll see if I can remember what it was called. It's like misconceptions of taxing the rich, I think it was called. When how, like, people say the rich aren't paying their fair share, and it's like, okay, tell me what their fair share is, and give me reasoning for it. Like, give me a number, a specific percentage that is, like, give me, like, some numbers for what their fair share is, and then give me the math. Like, don't just pick a number, but I'm telling you, explain your reasoning for that number. And, because you know, like, their fair share is always higher than what it currently is. And most people that say the rich need to pay their fair share don't even know what it currently is. So yeah, they are too highly taxed. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. Strongly agree. I don't think medical care is a human right. And as we've seen, like, with pretty much every industry, you want rich people to be able to buy the best technologies, because then that, like, when you're able to develop great new technologies to appease the rich, like, so the rich can buy it, that eventually, like, the rich, by funding that, means it becomes better for everyone. Like, if you don't have, like, a class of people that are rich enough to pay for your prototypes and original brand new stuff, it will never, like, make its way down to the middle class, because the middle class isn't going to pay a load of money for brand new technology. So by having a rich class to pay for brand new technology, that allows us to do more research and then profit off of new technology that allows us to then develop and continue to make it easier for like the middle class to afford. That's generally how that works. So when it comes to medical care, it's like, yeah, I want to, like, as with every industry, I think generally if you have more money, you should be able to get better service. That's generally how the market works, and I don't see an issue with that. That ends up helping everyone, including the poor. Government should penalize businesses that mislead the public. I agree. As libertarian as I am, I don't think this is against the libertarian position. In that, misleading, it depends what you mean by mislead. Like, lie? Yes. If the government or if a business comes out and completely lies, like just puts out something that's totally false, like not like they said something and it turned out to be wrong, or I'm not talking about like the certain advertisements where they put like an attractive woman on the advertisement and therefore like it makes people buy it. That's not misleading, even though it kind of is like that. I don't mean that kind of misleading, but just the general idea of if someone outright lies, then sure. Like I don't see that as government overreach to penalize someone that just outright lies. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. I disagree. If you look back through early American history, back during the time where we pretty much had no restrictions on monopolies and monopolies could pop up whenever you want, we had quite a few monopolies, but they were always like good monopolies in the sense that they were only number one because people wanted them to be number one, and they continually provided good products. Like, prices continued to go down. I think they looked back and they looked at all the monopolies up until like antitrust and regulation started happening in the U.S. They looked back at like all the monopolies and they found that out of all the industries with a monopoly company, like only 2 of them out of the hundreds, only 2 did like the price go up, and one of them was castor oil. I don't remember what the other one was. I think the other was kerosene or something. I can't remember. But yeah, essentially, it seems to. I find it rather interesting that again the regulations and restrictions of like the antitrust stuff, the anti-monopoly stuff, tends to be pushed quite strongly and written by and enforced by the monopolies themselves. Like we're thinking back, like Teddy Roosevelt, Trust Buster. It's like who put it? Who like. Was it Teddy Roosevelt that just suddenly was like, oh, trust busting, maybe I'll do that. Like these like we should bust up these we should do some antitrust legislation. That would be a good idea. He didn't just think of that. No, like the Rockefeller banking cartel was like, hey, Teddy Roosevelt, like here's a bunch of money, here's a bunch of funding. Why don't you break up our opponents? Like why don't you break up the JP Morgan banking cartel? And that's essentially what happened. Like it seems rather interesting that all of the anti-monopoly regulations seem to be encouraged and enforced, or encouraged and just highly encouraged by monopolies themselves. The freer the market, the freer the people. Strongly agree. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal. I don't know to go between agree or strongly agree. In my personal opinion, it's whatever makes it, whatever gets rid of it. And it's down to like if you. I will say agree. Because then again, it's like, am I against the morning after pill? No. Am I against, I'm not against the morning after pill, which I think is what strongly agree is. But I will say agree, because I want abortion to happen as, the least amount of abortion to happen as possible. All authority should be questioned. Yes, always. There's nothing wrong with questioning authority, and if authority gets offended when they are questioned, that makes me question their authority. Like if they get offended when their authority is questioned, it makes me think they're rather insecure and not entitled to such an authority. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. I disagree in that I don't know how much I really disagree with that, but in my opinion, the whole if someone commits a crime, I'm all down to whatever stops them from committing more of that crime again, and whatever is enough of a disincentive to stop other people from committing that crime. So, but then again, like it might be a good idea in the sense of if I steal something from someone and whatever, like if I steal something from someone, if I steal $1,000 worth of like whatever I stole is worth $1,000. Maybe it's just pure cash, or maybe it's something that's worth $1,000. Whatever I stole, should I then not only have to return what I stole, but also pay another $1,000? I don't know. Well, maybe not, because then if I stole $10, like, and if I steal $10, I might be like, well, I can pay $10 as a penalty, and that's not a good enough disincentive for stealing. So I would say disagree. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. Strongly agree. I always see people being like, oh, if the government doesn't prop up this stuff, like, we'll live in such a dreary society, we won't have art, we won't have any of this stuff. And it's like, okay, so what you're telling, like, this is entertainment, right? Like, theaters, museums, that's entertainment, that is history. And for me, like, if something's in a museum and nobody cares about it, it doesn't need to be in a museum. Like, if it's some kind of rare object and nobody cares about it, then it's not worth anything. You might as well, like, okay, like, just destroy it. Because, again, if nobody cares about it, then it's not valuable. And there's the same thing with theaters. It's like, if someone puts on a show and they can't get enough tickets, they can't sell enough tickets, they can't get people to show up, they're not that good. Like, it's as simple as that. Rise up on your own merits. And it's like, even if we're talking about fossils or something, like fossils, if very few people care about fossils, they don't need to be in a museum. It's down to, like, you might personally care about it, but if you do, then surely you will fund the museums. So yeah, I am all for taxpayers not funding any of that stuff. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. I don't know. I would put in neither agree nor disagree with this one, but I can't. I would say disagree in the sense that, I mean, it is up to the parents, honestly. Like, it is up to the parents to make sure your kids show up to school. And, yeah, I really don't know. I would say that's something that's up to the parents, but I wouldn't really, like, I am at neither agree nor disagree. That is my position here, but I'm leaving it there just because, like, I don't know, like 50-50, like, I don't know. We'll just leave it there. All people have their rights, but it is better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep their own kind. Agree. When it says own kind, I don't know if they're talking about race, but in the sense that people will automatically segregate themselves. Whether by race, whether by religion, whether by culture, whether by whatever, like, as long as you're not having some kind of, like, government incentive that encourages mass immigration, generally, people kind of stick to their own, and I don't see anything wrong with that. Like, you stick with your own culture, your own people, like, and there's nothing wrong with that. As long as it's not forced, that's when it becomes an issue. But as long as it, like, this is just something that happens naturally. It's just wrong to enforce people to either mix or stay segregated. It's just let people do what they want. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. Strongly disagree. I don't know. I'm in the Molyneux school of things where it's kind of like down to the $1 million test of if you can pay someone $1 million to not do something, will they not do it? And if they say yes, then it's like, yes, they did have a choice. When people say, oh, I had no choice, I had to do it this way. And it's like, I am firmly in the belief that you can raise a child without spanking them. And apparently, like, I've only read a little bit of the research on it, but apparently, like, it really can mess up the kid, because all of a sudden you're having this, like, from the child's perspective, you're like, okay, I need this person to love me or I die. Like, literally, like, that's how it is. Because if your parents don't care about you, you die, because you're relying on them for food and shelter and sustenance. So when a parent is like, yes, I'm going to hit my child, or like when the parent is all of a sudden like, yes, I'm going to inflict violence on you, that pretty much messes up the kid. As far as the research is, from what I've read, it's like, yeah, I can imagine that being pretty dang traumatizing for like, especially very young children, when it's like, okay, because especially the argument tends to be the kid is not smart enough to understand why they've done something wrong, and therefore you have to use violence as a deterrent. Well, if they're not smart enough to understand why what they did was wrong, they're not smart enough to understand why their parent has completely, as they see it, at random, just suddenly been like, okay, I'm going to harm my child. So that's my thing. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Sure, like, secrets are fine. There's nothing wrong with secrets. I'm not going to say strongly agree, because I think parents should play an active role in their child's life, and that they shouldn't be prying, but if your child does not feel comfortable coming to you with issues, then I think you're doing it wrong. I know people are probably going to get mad at me for the last two parenting ones, because they're going to be like, oh, you're not a parent. And it's like, no, I'm not a parent, but tell me why I'm wrong. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Strongly agree. It's a plant. And this comes from someone that has never smoked weed and probably will never smoke weed or consume weed in any manner. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. It says prime, as in primary, but not only. So I would say agree, in the sense of I'm thinking of government schools, like how we're thinking about, okay, the government had, at least the U.S. government had kids for 13 years, and most of them can't even find a good job. Like when people say we need to raise the minimum wage, like my first thing is, okay, so what you're telling me is the government had kids for 13 years, and they're not worth $15 an hour. It's like that's a problem with their school system. And I went to one of the better schools, and I think the fact that I went to a good government school makes me hate government schools so much, because it's like, oh, is this really the best they had to offer? Like, like, thank you, government schools, for putting me in classes that I really did not care about. Like, history class, did not care. I mean, I cared about my grade, but I didn't enjoy the subject. Like, I didn't enjoy history class. Psychology I thought was kind of interesting. That was because I already had kind of an interest in it to begin with. Philosophy in college, hated it. Literature class, didn't really like it that much. And then I realized that, like, reading books, I love reading, as anyone that subscribes to my channel can find out. I love philosophy, I love history, I love all this stuff. But, school made me hate it, so not a good thing. People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. Disagree. In that, like, should someone with Down syndrome, I don't know. Like, my idea is, it's, for one, I don't want government in charge of that, and two, anyone with any, like, I think if anyone had some serious disability that would make it immoral for them to reproduce and punish that child with existing with that condition, those people probably aren't reproducing anyway, because they're like, that's my thing. Like, is it if someone is like the butterfly, the butterfly disease, whatever it's called, where your skin is just like, your skin just kind of falls off, and it's like your whole body is in pain because your skin, there's some you're missing some enzyme that just doesn't keep your skin together, and you're pretty much having to live in, like, bandages your whole life. I don't know if those people are reproducing, because that sounds like they're not never going to live long enough to do that. So in that case, it's like, would it be immoral to give birth to someone if you knew they were going to have that disease? Probably, but it's like, I think this is such a minor issue that it's not really worth taking control over. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. Strongly disagree. The most important thing for children to learn is, I guess, independence. Independence, critical thinking. Yeah, way more, like, is it okay to accept, again, discipline? Like, I disagree. I'm just going to say that much. There are no savage and civilized people. There are only different cultures. That is cultural relativism. That is dumb and wrong. Strongly disagree. Those who are able to work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support. Strongly agree. They shouldn't expect it. Like, if someone is a freeloader and does nothing, and someone, like some relative, wants to fund them and support them, then that is their right. They are perfectly okay to do that. But if someone is able to work and says, screw you, no, then sucks to be them. I really could not care less if they starve to death on the street, because as long as they choose that position, because as the question established, they are able to work. If they choose that position, it sucks to be them. When you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. Disagree. Not strongly disagree, because you don't want to brood on it. Like, you don't want, like, when you have a troubled issue, you don't want to focus, like, your entire life on that. Like, you got to go to work. Sometimes, like, if you're troubled and you got to go to work in a bit, you got to suck it up and deal with it and go to work and do that and then deal with it later. But, no, when you're troubled, that means there's an issue you need to resolve, and just shoving it down is not, like, hiding it and not thinking about it is not how you fix it. That's something you need to process when you're troubled. Like, when you're troubled, that's your mind's way of saying something is wrong. Like, you need to fix something here. It's like pain. Like, pain is there for a reason. Pain is there to say, hey, there is an issue. Like, so it's that kind of thing. First-generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. I disagree. First-generation immigrants, it's like, I know plenty of people that are not in America but are very westernized. Like, they are at their hearts like a true-blooded American, more than most Americans. So in that sense, I have to agree. It's like, yeah, if they're like, does this apply to everyone? Does this apply to most people? I'm gonna say no, especially, again, in mass immigration. Can someone that immigrates to this country and then immigrates with tons of other friends and then goes to this community that is entirely their friends and their family from their old country, and doesn't learn the language and barely interacts outside of their, like, if it barely interacts with the community outside of their own small isolated community, then no, you're not going to be integrated. But can there be some full or first generation immigrants that can fully integrate? Yes, because the question is never. And I say, like, again, as long as there's more than one, or as long as there's more than zero, this question is false, or this statement is false. So yes, I disagree. There are some that can be. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for us all. Disagree. I don't strongly disagree, because again, like if a corporation rises on its own merits and the free market supports it, then it is good for us. Like Amazon being successful, that is good for society. Like, people point to all the closed down businesses, and it's like, oh, everything's closed. Like, all these small businesses are closing down. It's like, well, if your local small business, like what I found, that most people, when their local small business shuts down, they're like, well, I've been buying everything from Amazon for the last 10 years. I've never stepped foot in that store. It's a real shame that store shut down. It's like, well, if you want your local small business to succeed, then go there, visit there, like, pay stuff. If it's more expensive, like, pay for it. If you're not fine paying the extra, if you prefer Amazon, use Amazon. But yeah, I found that it's not always true. But there are, like, when we're talking about things like Amazon, it's like, Amazon is successful because people like Amazon, not because it provides a value to society, not because as far as I know, not like. The reason I say disagree on this is because I'm thinking of the mass corporations that basically rely on government, like have relied on regulations and things to get their way. They've exploited the system through government. But in a free market, if a corporation rises on their own merits, then sure, that is good for society. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should receive public funding. I agree. You don't need, like, think of the media right now. Think of just media, not the mainstream, but just media in general. We don't need to subsidize that. And again, as soon as you start subsidizing it, it's like, okay, so if Pepsi started, like, people are like, if Pepsi bought 15% of the New York Times, they're going to be biased towards Pepsi. So if the government were to subsidize or the New York Times and provide 15% of their funding, they're going to be biased towards the U.S. government. So it's like, it doesn't stop. It doesn't suddenly stop being a conflict of interest as soon as the government funds it. It's like they're still biased there. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. Agree. Not strongly agree, but agree. Like, when we're talking about I think what people have to remember is, as bad as terrorism is, and I will never say it's not a bad thing, in terms of number of people killed, it's like practically nothing. It's like, I don't know what the list of people, like, of the list of causes of death, it's like, I don't even know if it's in the top 100. So yeah, when it comes to, like, NSA spying, that is an example of people going way too far. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay process in a democratic political system. I mean, okay, is it an advantage? Sure, like, that's an advantage. There's a bunch of other downsides that fully outweigh that, so I'm going to say disagree because it's not a significant advantage. It's like, you want all the arguments and, okay, strongly disagree, because you do want all the arguments and delay progress, and you want to delay progress in a democratic institution. You want to make it to where it's very complicated to change things. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. Strongly disagree. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. See, I'm gonna say I am anti-death penalty because, as we've seen, like, if we could use the death penalty and kill like 500 people and one of those people were innocent, I don't want the death penalty then. Like, I am of the opinion that, like, lock them up for life. And I know people have brought up pricing as a matter. Well, at least I know not everyone that watches this is from the U.S., but at least in the U.S. it's actually more expensive, intentionally made more expensive to kill someone, to use the death penalty on them, or to punish them with a death penalty, than it is to just lock them up for life. So I would say I'm typically against. I'm not so much against the idea of killing someone for I'm like if there's a serial rapist out there and they die, I'm not gonna feel bad. If there's a serial killer out there that dies, I'm not gonna feel bad. If there's someone that's literally contributed nothing to society and just continuously stolen from people and they die, I'm not gonna feel bad. But it's more of I don't trust the system to accurately be able to. I don't think the system is good enough to be able to decide who should live and who should die. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. Agree. People say that's authoritarianism, and then I'll probably move me a bit towards authoritarianism. But in the sense of even an ANCAP, like I used to be an ANCAP, even in like an anarcho-capitalist philosophy, there are still people that are giving commands, and there are still people that like are obeying their leaders. It's just we're talking about businesses. We're talking about like there's always going to be hierarchy. It's just all down to, is that hierarchy enforced with violence, or is that hierarchy because everyone was like, yeah, we want you to be the leader because you're a good leader and we want you to have that position. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. Strongly agree. I mean, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, as the phrase goes, I think. So in the sense of if a bunch of people like legitimately consider it art and they're not just like trying to be fancy and trying to be elitist, then I'm sure it's art. But I don't know. Can art really not represent any? I don't know. I mean, I guess they're talking about just the splattering something on a screen, and there you go. So I'll say agree. Strongly agree. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. Strongly disagree. Honestly, it's like I know this comes from the position of someone that hasn't really been abused or punished, like been a victim of any kind. Like I'm not really much of a victim of anything, to be honest. Besides our public school system, but again, like I don't really care about punishing people, to be honest. Like I might change my mind if someone I love is killed. In that case, I might be the one trying to do the publishing. But generally, like in a more unemotional, abstract proportion, my whole goal was to just, like, I think the goal of society should not be punishment. The goal of society should be to stop crimes. So, like, in the sense of punishment should not be the ends, it should only be the means to an end, is to get people to stop committing crimes. And rehabilitation can certainly work in a lot of sense. So I think rehabilitation should always be tried first and pushed pretty persistently, and if they really are a lost cause, then it's okay, you just have to punish them. And not for the sake of punishing them, but for the sake of keeping them away from society where they could do more damage. It is a waste of time to try and rehabilitate some criminals. Yes, it is a waste of time to rehabilitate some criminals. Like, I don't think everyone can be redeemed. I think most people can be redeemed, but I don't think everyone can. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. I don't know. They're both very important. In fact, when you think about it, like the writer, it's kind of like the business and the manufacturer. See, I would put neither agree nor disagree, although I'm going to go with agree just because the business person and the manufacturer are the ones that create society, in my opinion. They're the ones that build society. The writer and the artist is the one that they're the ones that make society more interesting, like they're the ones that make it worth living in. I would say. It's like the business person and the manufacturer, they're the ones that they create the society, and the writer and the artist make it worth being created. So it's like when you think of the boring world where, like, would you want to live in a world without any writers and artists? No. I wouldn't. Like, that'd be a very boring world, and it wouldn't be worth living in. However, without the business person and manufacturer, you're not going to have that world to begin with. So it's all down to, I think, again, it's like, what's more important, the one that builds the world or the one that makes the world worth building in the first place? And I would say that's, again, like, if you don't have writers and artists, well, the business person and manufacturer kind of pointless, because what's the point of building something if it's going to be, like, if nobody wants it, it's dull and boring and not worth it. But if you have the writer and the artist without the business person and the manufacturer, they're both going to starve to death because they have no society to create things in. So yeah, I'm going to say agree, just because that's how I kind of lean in the, like, I tend to have more respect for the business person manufacturer than the writer and the artist. Like, I respect the builders and creators more than I respect those people, even though I do think in the end they're both necessary. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Yes, strongly agree. Well, See, for one, they said mothers. They didn't say women. So remember that. They didn't say women. They said mothers. Because that's the thing. Like, if you're a woman and you don't want to have a child and you never have a child and you have a career and you're fine with that career and you're 90 years old and you're fine, like, you've made enough friends through other people that you can be taken care of and you never had a kid and you're fine with that, then good for you. Like, I know some people, like, especially the alt-right, seem to be pretty mad in the sense that it's like if a woman lives 90 years of age without a child and is perfectly content with that somehow that she's a horrible person. And, I disagree with that. It's like, if you want to do that, fine. If they've contributed to society through their career, and that's fine. But they said mothers. And the thing is, like, once you're a mother, like, I would say their first duty is to be, they say homemakers. Now, okay, so I'm going to reword this. See, I would disagree that their first duty is to be home. I will say disagree because their first duty is not to be homemakers. Their first duty is to be a mother. But is mother part of being a homemaker? I genuinely don't know. Like if mother is included in homemaker. But I think it is actually. I think it is. So I'm gonna say I agree. But that's the context for me answering in this way. If you're a mother, your first duty is to be a mother. Same thing with you. If you're a father, your first duty is to be a father. And I mean, it's all down to, like, do what you want. If you're in an unhappy marriage, it's like, well, you should have figured that out. Like, that's your own fault. You should have figured that out. You should have discussed this stuff. You should have discussed and figured out. But I think that really it's like if the mother wants to, as long as the child is being taken care of, because the child is priority. Like, I think in the end, the child is what's most important. If you have, like, if you were looking at what is best for the child, what is the most healthy for the child, it's like, well, like, what's better, to be poor or to not ever see your parents? Or to, like, is it better to be poor or to be in daycare for the first few years of your life while your parents are both out working? It's like, well, it's better to be poor, honestly. Like, if you want to, like, it's just, yeah. So mothers' first duty is to be mothers. If they have a career, their first duty is to be a mother. I will say that. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. I tend to disagree because this is an overall, like, we're not talking about specific examples, we're talking about in general, and I would say I disagree. In general, multinational corporations tend to be doing, like, they're providing, they're helping to industrialize society, they're providing jobs. So I would say generally they're a good thing, although I am fully aware of, like, government intervention where government will be like, okay, we're going to give foreign aid to Azerbaijan. And what are we going to do in Azerbaijan? We're going to build a hospital. And we're going to pay this corporation to build a hospital in a place where does not need to be a hospital. Once it's built, we can be proud of ourselves for helping Azerbaijan with a hospital. And it's like then the hospital stays empty because it didn't need to be there. But it was basically corporate welfare because the corporations were like, hey, give us money for foreign aid, we can make things better. And it's pretty much just in that sense, it's exploitation, stuff like that, where you're probably if you're building a hospital, you're in a country in a place that doesn't need a hospital, you're probably exploiting the labor and the resources to build that thing that's not going to be needed. So in that sense, sure. But in a general free market sense that they're probably referring to, no. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. I disagree. I do think this is rather interesting. Like, I found this would be a good time to get into my opinion of. I might do this as a separate video or maybe write something on this. Of my idea of, like, what is a rebel. Like, I'm going to be one of those people that are like, oh, there are two kinds of people. In this case, there are three kinds of people, and I think I only respect one of them, and I consider myself a third, the third kind, the kind worth respecting. And maybe I'm wrong. But this is what I'd like to consider myself. So, you have the people that respect authority, right? They're the people that, they don't just respect it, they bow down to authority. They're the ones who are like, if it's in the law, therefore it's good. My parents told me this, therefore it's right. Like, some kind of authority told me this, therefore it's right, and I support it wholeheartedly, I'm a good citizen. And then you have the second group of people, which are kind of the exact opposite in the sense that they're rebels. But, the reason I call them the exact opposite is because it's not like they don't care about the establishment. They don't care about rules. They'll say they don't care about rules, but they do care about rules. It's like someone that drinks alcohol under the age of 21. Well, we've seen in a lot of states where actually, like, by making alcohol illegal up to the age of 21, more people drink because it's rebellious. I don't consider that someone really worth respecting, to be honest. And for the reason that'll, like, I respect that person as much as I respect the person that blindly obeys authority, I suppose. Because, in a sense, they are both being controlled and manipulated by authority. And if that makes sense, like, I'll explain it a bit if that doesn't make sense. So, like, you have the first person, which they pretty much do what authority says. And then you have the second person who does the exact opposite of what authority says. Like, if something wasn't illegal, they wouldn't do it. But as soon as it's illegal, they're going to do it. Just to spite, just to say, screw you, establishment. Then there's the third kind of person, which I think just doesn't care. I mean, they take the pragmatic sense of, it's like, oh, if you break the law, then, yeah, like, I consider myself the third person, where it's like, I'm not a rebel, I'm not obey authority, I'm neither. I'm the third category. Because both the rebel and the I don't even know what you call the first category, but the servant, the obeyer, I don't know, the good citizen, whatever you want to call it, both of them value authority in the sense of one takes what authority says and does what the authority says. Now the other takes what authority says and does the opposite. The third person is like just kind of pragmatic about it. Like, they don't take authority into account other than the general fact of, okay, what did this person say? Like, I'm like, maybe I'll do what they say because if I don't, I'll get thrown in jail, and I don't want to be thrown in jail, so I'll do what they say. Or maybe, like, it's in the sense of where whether or not something is illegal or legal or illegal does not affect their interpretation of that decision. So, like, whereas, again, the drinking example, so the first category of person will say, I agree with authority, or authority said this, therefore it is good to do it. Whereas the rebel will say, authority said this, therefore I should do the exact opposite. The third category would say, authority said this, meaningless. Like, that does not factor into my consideration. Again, besides the general pragmatic sense of, it's like, you got to take authority into account because, again, you have to take, like, is it worthwhile to just, if you don't want to make a decision and it's, like, if you want to do something and it's illegal, you're not going to be like, well, it's illegal so I can't do it, but you have to take into account at least, like, okay, well, is it really worth doing? Is it something I want to do? But I respect the third category a lot more than the rebel, who is just like I think they're the true rebels in the sense that, again, like, what's more rebellious, to do the opposite of what authority says or to not even take authority into account? Like, because remember that, like, the most insulting thing you can do to someone is just ignore them. Because if you do the opposite of what that person says, then they are controlling you. Because, like, all they have to do is do something and you'll do the opposite. It's a reverse psychology thing. Like, they're controlling you if you are basing your decisions off their opinion, whereas the third category person is not basing their decision off of what authority says. But that's a bit of a tangent, but I just want to get that out there. Okay, geez, we're only on page 5, and this is the second part of my recording for a single video, and we're about half an hour in. Astrology accurately explains many things. Strongly disagree. You cannot be moral without being religious. Strongly disagree. I will say, I do think, honestly, like, if I had to pick between a Christian society and an atheist society and say which is more moral, I would probably say the Christian society. But that's just because the atheists seem incredibly lazy in the sense that they have yet to provide a moral structure. Where, like, I've seen people, I used to be someone that agreed with the people that were like, well, like, I don't need religion because, like, and I actually used to disagree with the people that said, religion is, or some people need religion. I used to disagree with that too. But I've come around in my thinking over the last, like, probably 4 or 5 months. In the sense that, I noticed that the atheists, they're like, well, I don't, like, actually, it's a good Penn Jillette quote, which I agree with what he says, which is, like, I have raped everyone I've wanted to, like, and I've murdered everyone that I've wanted to. Like, I don't need someone to tell me that murder and rape is bad and that I need to be good and not do that because I just don't want to do it. Like, that is my opinion. But I think what they've failed to take account for is, like, yeah, there are people out there that generally, like, they need a moral structure in their life and they don't have that internally. And, it's like the atheists have yet to provide that. They have yet to provide a good moral system, like an actual moral structure for society. And that's something that I like about the libertarians. They have provided a moral structure that is, like, purely based in logic, and it is actually, you can't argue against it without refuting yourself. Hans Hoppe came up with argumentation ethics, and it's like, the whole libertarian concept is based off of self-ownership. So it's like, if I own my own body, like, if I own my body, if I control and have the rights to my own self, then anyone trying to interfere with my own self, like trying to attack me or hurt me, is violating my rights. And therefore, like that's the consequences of self-ownership. And Hans Hoppe came up with the thing is, well, if you argue against that and say, no, the person doesn't have self-ownership, you are using self-ownership to make that statement. You are using your own body and your own words. And if that makes sense, that's just a brief summary of it. I've not given it due justice, but that's a brief summary. So really, it's like, I think you can be moral without being religious. I just think the atheists need to like step up their game. And Sam Harris has tried to do it. I read his Moral Landscape book, but it's something he's working on, I guess. And I have yet to see anything, but we'll see. Maybe he can come up with something. I'm not too confident, but maybe. Charity is better than Social Security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. Strongly agree. Some people are naturally unlucky. I don't really believe in luck. In the I guess mystical sense. But I mean, I guess you could say like being born in Brunei, or like what's a really awful country? Like what's a country I would not want to be born in? Like what's the worst possible country out there that I really would not want to live in, right? I mean, I guess Syria, we could say. Syria's probably the worst one right now. Maybe Libya. Well, Libya has a slave trade now. So we'll say Libya. I mean, I guess to be born in Libya, that is a natural occurrence, and you are unlucky. And that is an unlucky thing, so maybe. It is important that my child's schools instill religious values. Disagree. I want them to honestly, I don't even know if I want them to instill values. I just want them to be a critical thinker. I want to be the one to instill values on my child, and I don't even want to indoctrinate them into the values. I want them to make their values, to have their own values, but I want them to be like backed up by something. Sex outside marriage is usually immoral. Strongly disagree. You can make pragmatic arguments against it, which there is in the sense that society does seem like there does seem to be a societal benefit overall to if it's generally like if it's taboo to have sex outside of marriage, because you figure more if you were to like culturally, not through government, but like culturally make it to where it's taboo if you have sex outside of marriage, or to word it easier, I guess, if you have a society where people typically only have sex in marriage, that leads to a better society, and that people grow up in 2-parent households, whereas I mean the sex outside marriage, it tends to lead to more chances for single-parent households, and that's a pretty awful thing. And though I would say it's not immoral, like, yeah, it's not an immoral act. It's kind of like doing drugs. It's like, or being obese. It's like, it's not immoral. It's a bad life choice, but it's not immoral. Like it's something that you shouldn't do, and it'd be better if you didn't do, but it's not immoral. A same-sex couple in a stable living relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. Strongly agree, because honestly, like I see people criticize that. Like they do point out that a same-sex couple apparently, I'm just going to take their word for it and say they're accurate when they say a same-sex couple can't parent as good as a heterosexual couple. And I do think that that's probably true. But you got to remember that, like, again, they say a same-sex couple in a stable, loving relationship. Like, I don't think that should be the bar. There's so many same-sex couples that can parent way better than certain people that have kids. So it's like, to be honest, people complaining about that, it's like, okay, can we please focus on the people that are beating their children first? Can we please focus on like single-parent households to begin with? Because I'm pretty sure, can you adopt if you're? I mean, obviously it's different in some jurisdictions, but I'm sure in certain areas, like I think you can have a kid without being. You can adopt a child if you're single. And that's a major issue right there. But then again, it's. I'm also thinking of it's like a same-sex couple should not be excluded from child adoption. It's like, well, is a same-sex couple worse than living in an orphanage? No, not at all. So yeah. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. Strongly agree. It's like, again, like, no matter what you think of it, should be legal. I don't see a problem with that. What goes on in a private, and it's like that's the thing that goes back to from the conservative stance. It's like if you don't like it, like convince people not to do it. Like tell people like it. I think that's your job. Where if I think that's the job of society to get people away from like bad choices like obesity and kind of stuff like that. Like that's the job of people within society. It's the job of the social institutions. It's not the government's job. It's the job of like social institutions. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. Consenting, yeah. No one can feel naturally homosexual. I disagree. I know some friends. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. I don't know if openness would be the right word. I would say the casualizing, is that a word? Like, I think I know what when they say openness, it's not even that openness is bad or that it's gone too far, but I would say agree, just because I think what they mean by openness is the degrading it into something it's just like people can do for whatever reason. And it's like they can, like they have every right to do it, but I think the harms on society that can have, I'm typically pretty conservative in that respect. Where it's like, yeah, shouldn't be illegal. Like government should not get involved. But when it comes to just the general like social, it's just better for society as a whole if it's considered this like valuable thing. All right, let's see where I am. So before I scroll down, I will say when I took it first in high school, I was like slightly top right of center. I was actually in the blue at the top right spectrum, the authoritarian right center. Or spot, just slightly up top and to the right. It was like one space up, two to the right, I think was what it was. And then basically I just kind of dropped down and went like pretty far towards the ANCAP side. And I haven't really taken it. Like the last time I took it, I was really ANCAP, and I haven't taken it since. So we're talking like way bottom right. So I'm really curious to see where I stand now. But you know how it is, like, okay. So they show you this here. This is how it works. Authoritarian, like authoritarians at the top, libertarians at the bottom, right wing, left wing. On the economic scale, they show some people here, like... Yeah, so let's see where I am. I know I'm going to be in the bottom right. Oh, is this mine? Oh, wow, I'm that high up. Jeez. I am that high up. I moved up a lot. And I actually moved left a lot, too. Jeez. Which, I think you can't trust this too much because, as I pointed, like, I explained my reasoning behind a lot of the questions that you could take it in two ways. But this is interesting. Okay, well, that's pretty much it. So there's where I stand. Let me know what you think in the comment section. I don't know, like, post your results. I know you can't really post your results with it in the YouTube comment section without it being taken on as spam, but I have, like, there's loads of ways to contact me in the description of the video, like mine's, Gab, like, send me your political compass. I want to see what it is. It'd actually be really interesting if a bunch of you could send me your like, a bunch of you who are subscribed could send me your political compass just to see where people end up. If I ever hit like a bunch of subscribers, like if I ever hit like 1,000 or something, maybe I'll do one of those polls where people can say where they lie on the spectrum just to get a decent idea. But yeah, this is where I lie. So when people call me an alt-right Nazi or people call me far left, or it's like, I'm pretty content with that. I wish I was a bit lower. I wish I was a bit closer to libertarian. But I think that's kind of with misunderstanding some of the questions where it's like, if I say yes to a question, that doesn't necessarily mean I want it to be enforced by government. Because I think that last section probably, I don't know. But it's interesting. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Again, like, if I said anything that you strongly disagree with, let me know why. I'm open to my mind being changed. Maybe I'll take this again in like a year or two and show where I am. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section. Like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more. And thanks for... Though, if you're watching this, you're probably already subscribed. And thanks for watching.